Say, kids, what time is it?
It's kind of like watching TV, but, in your car.
Like the intern, Jay Stevens. You know what that means. It's time for Dark Side of the Stream, our podcast on 104.7 The Cave.
Radio magic at its finest.
Where we take a look at a documentary most of the time, and I think that's kind of what we've been doing. We have never done an actual film, have we? It's just documentaries, right?
No, I think we did one once.
Like an actual movie?
Yeah, I think it was something. It wasn't my choice.
And it was kind of meh.
Exactly.
It was kind of meh. So we stuck with the documentaries.
More thought-provoking, these documentaries.
Yeah, and you learn something, we learned something, and I definitely learned something about something I didn't know. I think I had heard about it once. I believe you were correct. It was featured on Unsolved Mysteries at one point.
I think that's where I heard about it.
But the documentary we are looking at today is called This Is A Robbery, and it involves the world's largest art heist ever at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. Crazy story.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy story. Now, let's start at the beginning with Isabella Stewart Gardner. Well, now, this chick was awesome. Born in the late 1800s, died in the early 1900s.
Kind of a partier, wild girl.
She was extremely eccentric. She had
sexual.
Gobs of money. And when she passed, she left over a $3 million endowment to this museum with, and I think this is the most badass thing about this whole documentary, the will, which states, if you change anything in this place, anything,
done.
The frames all moved a little bit, you rearrange or whatever, everything must be crated up, sold at auction in Paris, and that's that. So guess what?
Deal.
This museum has literally looked the same as it did since she put it together in the early 1900s. Now, that is awesome. Now, again, you think about museums and how now they're a lot more modern. Security is insane. I mean, have you ever been to like the Art Institute of Chicago before?
No.
Dude, okay, first of all, it's badass. I mean, you got Monet's in there. You've got, I've seen some art museums in Chicago. If there is a reason to go to Chicago besides the food or to see a concert, museums are the reason. Natural History Museum is badass. Art Institute's badass. But the point I'm trying to make is security at these things are insane. You can't even walk in the wrong direction without someone jumping out and saying, hold off.
Really?
Oh, dude. It's crazy.
You can't walk up and finger a painting?
No, man. Don't even think about breathing on the glass. They will jump down your throat so quick. So the reason I bring this up, and the first thing we're going to talk about this documentary is security or lack thereof at a building that contained millions of dollars worth of artifacts. The only Rembrandt skiscape ever painted, just the Manet's, the list goes on and on. We could dive into that, but really,
so you would have a crack security team there.
Well, and the crazy thing is, right before this all went down in the late 80s, they had actually had a consultant come in just to check and make sure everything was cool with security, and they said it's on par with other museums, but they recommended improvements, and they were kind of hurting money-wise. So also, the other thing they were up against was Mrs. Gardner's wishes that nothing be changed. And if you wanted to put all this new security stuff in there,
can't do that. Can't do that.
Wall glass stuff, ropes, she didn't want that.
All you could do is hire the best security staff you could find.
Which is opposite of what they did. They got a guy literally showing up to work stoned.
That guy looked like he worked on the cave.
Actually, dude.
Like he looked like a guy that we would hire here.
Before Jay Stevens
maybe
was here
run
at the
board,
cave,
right.
He was working a security at an art museum in Boston in the early 90s, and this is all his fault. We'll talk more about it, Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave.
Say, kids, what time is it?
It's kind of like watching TV, but, in your car.
Jay Stevens, Mike the Intern, back in the studio. It is Dark Side of the Stream, our podcast on 104.7 The Cave. This week, we are looking at the series This Is A Robbery, involving the art heist at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Let's first talk about Otto.
Stick him up.
Let's talk about Otto.
So they got the security team, the night security team.
Dude.
And it looked like Otto, the bus driver, Simpsons. He plays keyboards in a band on the off nights.
Soon as they go into the security guy and he's got like duct tape all around his face.
Oh, I felt so bad. He's got duct tape around his hair when they found him. I felt he had long curly hair. I was like, that could have been me. It could have been you.
It was you. This guy is taking acid, smoking weed before he goes. He plays keyboards in like a hippie cover band.
And then he goes to work on the night shift at the museum. And dude, if you got to hang out in a weird, creepy museum all night, you probably should take acid and just Enjoy the ride.
What a hell of a job. I cannot believe this guy got a gig. So, yeah, security was lax. What went down is two guys dressed as police officers walked in, taped this guy up. They actually had a witness that saw him, two witnesses that were partying and saw these guys sitting in the car before they went out. They knew enough about the area to know where the security cameras were, to take this stuff. The other part of the problem with the crime scene was that the ball of tape that was used to tape up the guard went missing, and that was probably their best shot at getting fingerprints. All the people walking in and out. I mean, they explained how at the time when you go into a crime scene, there are people in and out all day. Now it's different. There's a guy or a girl that sits at the front and says, "What's your name?" When you come in.
They knew the procedure.
They did.
And these two guys dressed as policemen showed up at the door and they said, "Hey, let us in. We're cops, basically." And Otto said, "Come on in."
Let them in. He had also done something weird, which I'd never been explained, which was to open the door and close it. Now, that doesn't make any sense because you've got cameras on the door. Why would you open that door? Unless to just take a couple puffs.
I don't know.
I don't understand why he's doing it other than to signal
someone. And they're not supposed to, the protocol is you're not supposed to buzz anybody in. But he's I guess they say that they would do that all the time.
Yeah,
let
buzz people in and no big deal.
So they buzz in the cops and then the cops come in and say, "Hey, yeah, we heard a disturbance over here." And then they go, "Oh, by the way, this is a robbery. Stick them up."
They spent 81 minutes in the museum.
That's a long time to be robbing a place.
Very long time, and we'll get to something that I thought was really interesting about that later on. They went through and stole some very expensive paintings, but they also touched ones that weren't worth a whole lot. They cut out certain ones. They took a lot of time on other things that really didn't matter.
It was very weird.
Strange and very specific. And that's weird. It was either as if they knew what they were doing, they were told what to take, or they had really no clue and they were just kind of going around going, "Oh yeah, this is worth something."
Well, if you're taking a nice art painting, you think you're going to take the whole painting. You're not going to cut the canvas.
Yeah.
Like weird, random.
So they get into a lot of theories about where these paintings are, who took them, and we'll get into those theories next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave.
Say, kids, what time is it?
It's kind of like watching TV, but, in your car.
Mike, the intern, Jay Stevens, back in the studio this morning. It's Dark Side of the Stream. Discussing This Is A Robbery, about the world's largest art heist at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Like, what'd they say, $500 million in art that was taken? Something like that?
It was,
I mean, a ton. Actually, right now, they started the reward at like $1 million. Like Christie's and Sotheby's, the auction houses, put up $1 million for it. Then around mid-90s, and when it started to gain traction again, they opted to $5 million. The current reward offering for these paintings to be recovered, $10 million.
So if you're listening and you have any of these paintings, holler at your boys, and we'll be the middleman on the transaction.
Yeah, we'll take a small 5% of that $10 million.
Small finder's fee.
All day. So it gets painted pretty quickly that the FBI, I mean,
no pun intended.
They did a good job at the get-go, but it was quickly figured out that they really didn't care a whole lot. Because around this time in the 90s, in the early 90s, the only thing that mattered to the Federal Bureau investigation was mafia and mob guys. That's all they wanted to do. Art heist didn't get you a promotion. Art heist didn't get you in the news. You bust a guy who's in the mafia, boom, you're all over the place. So get-go, it was like, I mean, they did their due diligence, but again, you had the witnesses coming back saying, "I was never contacted by the FBI."
Right.
The sketches were kind of
lower priority.
Yeah.
But so you got an art heist in Boston, and you go, okay, there's a famous art heister here in Boston. Let's go shake him down. You would think that's the guy. That's the guy.
He was in jail.
He was in jail.
However, he was also
another guy that was in a band part time as well.
Yeah, he was also in a band.
A lot of rockers in this.
He has
a
45 out if you can find it, and it is what it is. But his buddy, who also had mob connections, was also in communique with this guy, and we'll get to that. It kind of comes back around.
The water gets muddy.
It kind of comes back around to him. Now there's two schools of thought here. Well, actually more than that. One, it was somebody that specifically wanted something. They hired a team. They went in there, got it done. The second thought was that the Irish mob had something to do with this, to use those paintings as collateral to get guns to the IRA, which was heavily involved in Boston and also in Ireland at the time. I don't really buy that one. The second one is the Italian mob thing, also used to move around, get money, because it's global currency all day.
And also used to get out of jail.
But they start focusing on this auto body shop south of Boston called, I think it was IRC or something like that.
Another shady
TRC.
group of characters.
They basically said that this was a place, TRC Auto Electric, that if you wanted something, you went to TRC Auto Electric and they got it for you. It didn't matter if it was cocaine or the Sea of Galilee painting. They think that a crew of these guys were hired by someone in the mob, and they think they know who it was.
They were doers.
Got it. Now, they followed the guy who supposedly was the brainiac of this thing. Right after this happened, shot dead, mafia hit. They can't find the paintings, right? They found him in his car, gone. Then they start trailing this down, and they find these two guys that they think involved. That one dude that had served time for a murder he supposedly didn't commit. Yeah. As soon as I saw his face, I was like, there's one of your sketches.
I know, man. He looks like the guy on the sketch. He looks like the guy on the...
all day.
Yeah.
All day.
Yeah.
Now, another guy who was involved with Back to the Rock and Roll guy was sent to do a favor. He had a trailer somewhere, and he went to go do something for him. He got in his trailer, and supposedly years later contacted a reporter for the Boston Globe and said, I have access to this stuff. The guy at the Boston Globe claims to have seen the Sea of Galilee wrapped up in a tube, which, again, is so stupid. That paint's going to crack.
Yeah, very random.
Is that box acid free? And if it's not, it's just getting eaten away. It's been 30 years now, 40 years now. So it's
a true mystery.
It's a true mystery. They still don't really know. They tried to work out a deal with these two guys who claimed to have the painting. FBI finally said, we're not going to be extorted by these guys because this feels like extortion. Yeah. They want prize money. They want immunity, but we're not going to give it to them, and then one of the guys ends up getting killed or something like that too. And they can't, the trails just keep getting shut down.
Very wacky scene, man.
When they went after one of the guy we mentioned, that we think looks like the dude in the sketch, which I really think that was one of them. They went to his sister-in-law, his former sister-in-law, and she was awesome, dude. Oh my God.
She was a trip.
Because she started talking about how she went to hang a photo.
She was a true Boston, old school lady. Boston.
Straight out of the gate, she's like, he has us come over, hang up this frame, and to even it out, and she kept calling it a foo-foo frame. What do you got a foo-foo frame for? I'm like, what's a foo-foo frame? But anyway, she helps him hang it. Years later, someone from the Gardner Museum calls her, and it's like, hey, we think there might be a similarity between your brother-in-law or former brother-in-law and this thing. And she's like, he couldn't do anything. He was slow at everything in life. And they go, well, the hit took about 81 minutes, and she goes, that could have been him. And then they go, also something that not a lot of people knew that happened was that one of the robbers kept going downstairs and making sure that the guard was okay. Do you need anything? Are your arms too tight? You feel okay? And she goes, he had been in prison for something he didn't commit, and he knew what it was like to be locked up like this. And she felt like that was another red herring, that he would do something like that because that was the type of guy he was.
Crazy.
So yeah, it's really crazy story, and to this day, those things are.
We'll get to the exciting conclusion next.
Yes, we'll talk more about the robbery situation next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave.
Say, kids, what time is it?
It's kind of like watching TV, but in your car.
Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens, back in the studio trying to figure out where in the hell these paintings are, so we can get our $10 million.
Who's got the art?
It's Dark Side of the Stream discussing This Is A Robbery, and that's really how the whole documentary ends.
Yeah, it leaves you hanging. It's one of those documentaries, there is no resolve, there is no twist. It's just, hey.
Have you seen these paintings?
They show the paintings, and they're asking for your help. Now, the one thing I think is weird or random is paintings are rare, right? They're pretty much, people know this painting by this guy. How are you going to steal a painting? How are you going to sell it? You know, it's like,
well, and that's
you can't just like show up to the next art dealer place and go, "Hey, I found this in the garage." They're like, "No, we know that's stolen."
One of the theories was that the guy who ended up getting popped like a couple months after this thing went down, who they think probably spearheaded this thing, he wanted to use that as collateral to get his buddy out of jail.
Right.
But then. Obviously, he got killed before that. He wasn't going to do anything right after this happened. He needed to sit on it, wait till the reward money comes out.
It just seems like a weird thing to steal, man. It seems like a weird thing to steal.
Get my guy. Well, yeah, but I mean, crime sometimes doesn't make any sense, Jay.
And it goes back to the whole thing, in my opinion, of art is so subjective.
Oh, what's worth to you?
Yeah, will you tell me this
yeah.
painting is worth $10 million for what? For what? I don't see the value.
Well,
I don't see
if
the
you
value.
look at it from the perspective of a collector, which I am a collector, obviously with records, there are certain things about recordings that exist. I'll give you an example. Real long sought after one, John Lee Hooker's "It Served You Right to Suffer." The crazy thing about that record is it was recorded for a jazz label by a producer who'd never worked on it with a blues musician more, with John Lee Hooker and a bunch of jazz studio musicians. It's a phenomenal record, recorded as literally the best possible way. If you got a good audiophile quality record of this, you can hear John Lee Hooker breathing in your room.
If I had a copy of it, I would leave it in here. I'd give it to you.
Exactly. See, and
Zero
that
value.
is my
Zero
point.
value to me.
I know what that's value to me, but
And
to
what's
you,
the value
it
to you?
doesn't- Well, I think I paid like $60 for it.
See, and I would be
See?
like, get this out of here. It's
But again,
garbage,
that's
you know?
subjective to sell your point home.
It's
So
just very weird.
It
like
is.
the whole art thing. And if you
collector
watch some
thing
of
in
those
general.
Banksy documentaries, it kind of like questions the whole
Well,
what
look
is
what
art.
happened with NFTs.
Yeah.
You
right.
got people paying hundreds of thousands of dollars
Yes.
for a video clip.
Basically a TikTok video.
Literally, I can copy it off of YouTube. See, and that's the thing. It now at this point when collecting, it's there are certain things that I want that are specific variants, whatever. But the media is all that matters to me on vinyl, and if the audiophile, if the quality's there, I want it on vinyl because I know it's good. So that's the point about the NFT things I don't get. It's like, well, I could still get that video on YouTube and have it.
Doesn't make sense,
Doesn't make any
guys.
sense. But again, it is subjective, and that's the deal. And hopefully someday they get these back, especially from the perspective of an art lover, which I am. The Sea of Galilee is Rembrandt's only seascape painting. It's an incredible painting. To get that back would be great. To see it again would be great.
Watch the documentary because it's interesting, and watch and see who you think did it, because there's a lot of cast characters in this caper.
That was the only downside about it that I like. I thought they got so into the details. I fell asleep one night trying to finish it. So
Yeah, it's a little bit deep. It's a little
It gets
deep.
a little
deep.
classroomy. So our rating system this week is foo-foo frames.
How many foo-foo
How many
frames?
foo-foo frames would you
I
give
give
this?
it 2 fufu frames.
Out of 5?
Yeah, it was.
Okay,
yeah,
I'd say
2.
I'd say 2.5 to 3.
It was,
foo-foo
it
frames.
was good because it was interesting and it was mysterious, but didn't really have any twist. It didn't
No.
really go anywhere. It didn't have any resolve.
It's kinda like reading a police report.
It's just an interesting story, right?
It was.
Yeah.
It was. 4 episodes is a little bit long,
Yeah.
and they definitely milked it out.
They've been doing that lately.
They have been doing that. But we're not,
Netflix producers, if you're listening, make them
on.
1 episode shorter.
which is what we're going to do for next week. White Boy documentary about White Boy
Rick.
White Boy Rick.
The young drug dealer,
The young
teenage drug dealer,
drug
Yeah,
dealer.
baller.
Like, I don't know, I wouldn't call it baller, but I definitely call it an entrepreneur, if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
will. Dark Side of the Stream. Remember, you can download these as a podcast on our 104.7 The Cave app. Like, subscribe, and share to your friends. Again, it's Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave.